Hi, I'm Paulina. I'm the creative director of DragonBear Studios.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm the technical director of DragonBear Studios.
Your game is Enchanted. Tell me about Enchanted. I've never played it before. How would you describe it for people if they're coming into it very fresh?
So I describe it as a magical cooperative game where you and your friends run a enchanted inn.
Yeah, so in Enchanted, you're going to serve magical potions, pacify monsters that invade, help out your community, and explore the mystery of your magical inn. You're going to need to not only look after your customers during the day, but you also need to look after the inn in the evenings, where you'll make meaningful choices that sort of tell you a bit of a story, give you a little bit of a option, and also lets you see who your characters are.
And so what's the gameplay like? How do you actually play this game?
So first grab your friends, and you'll be running around with a controller, a very simple, easy, like basically 2-button game where you'll be running around pouring drinks, magical potions, walking over to customers, serving them. Maybe now someone's ordered some steak at the restaurant. You need to quickly rush over there, get their meal cooked in time. Someone's trying to rob your piggy bank at the same time. Quickly, like rush off, stop that thief, and it's quite a frantic little enjoyable time. You can play it with your friends, 4-player co-op, or you can play single player. We've got a fully fleshed out AI companion that'll help you serve customers as well.
And so developing the game, how long has it been in the works for? And this is the second PAX that I've seen it at. How long has it been, exhibited? How many times have you shown it off to people?
Well, it's been about 2.5 years of development, including prototyping and things like that. This is the second PAX. We've showcased it at a few places, at Game Devs of Color in New York. We showcased it at the Raw Fury Loft during GDC last year.
Our first PAX was last year, 2019, where we had a pretty great response. We had a lot of really enthusiastic people, and they've gone on to become our fans who are still championing us at the moment and waiting for the game to come out with fingers crossed.
And what's it like getting a demo out to a wider audience? Because that's part of the PAX experience that, all the games that are there, people can play it at home in their leisure. What has that experience been like leading up to that and now that it's in people's hands?
It's been very different to last year. I guess when we showcased it at PAX Oz, we know it was like just locally in Melbourne. And we had control of the builds and things, and this has been a whole different and much more scary, I think, because it's like to the whole world. And additionally, we had less time to prepare for it because it's in September and PAX is normally in October, so that was extra stressful.
Yeah, I'd say the lead up was terrifying, but the actual launch and response has been really nice and chill. Part of what makes doing it in person a lot more reliable is if something goes wrong, we can sort of fix it. We're right there. We're like, oh, sorry, just like press the button, and then they're backing off they go. But we had to have this build that had to be foolproof to a certain extent. We couldn't let everyone completely loose with it because we went there to hold their hand. So I guess we had to put extra care into just making sure that everything worked well, and there were very few bugs, and I think we've done pretty well. I'm fairly happy with how we've gone. So
it's also just been like a really different experience because when people play it in PAX Oz, you can immediately see how they feel about it. But hundreds and hundreds of people have played it, and we don't know, because we're not there. If that makes sense, thousands actually.
Have you been surprised by the reach that it's had?
Yeah,
yes, I didn't expect it to get over 1,000 downloads in the first couple of days, so that was wild.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the pessimistic side, like not overly rude, but I'm just like, look, maybe our friends are going to play it. Some people who are our fans are going to play it. If we get 80 downloads, we'll be happy. And then the first 24 hours we had over 800, and it's only been growing from there. So it's nice.
One of the things that I really liked about playing the game was what it did feel like a familiar sort of model for me. It's the sort of game where you're sort of managing little tasks and you're trying to balance that, and different things are going off on little timers and stuff. And I've played a lot of fun games that have that sort of experience. But for me, the setting of it is really fascinating. And probably I think the most interesting thing about your game is that it's a fantasy world, but it's not a fantasy world that's grounded in like a European history. It's actually got a lot of Australianisms in it. It's got a lot of Indigenous history and culture in it as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about building out that world and kind of sort of enmeshing those two ideas together?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When we played Moon Hunters for the first time, that's how we felt too. We noticed that this is a whole different fantasy world that's not normally what you see, and we were really enamored by it. We thought this is 100% what fantasy is. It's not just a Western thing. Every culture in the history of humanity has had fantasy, because that's part of stories, it's a part of imagining, it's a part of play, and so when we thought about how can we do that here with all the Indigenous practitioners that we work with, it really was quite effortless, because the world is so rich. Like Indigenous culture is, hundreds and hundreds of different tribes and clans, and they all have their own language and own cultural practices. So it was just, in some ways, because of that, it was easy to build a full-fleshed world when it's based on or inspired by that.
It's just something we haven't seen before. You can look at examples of fantasy, and you can find your European fantasy in so many games. These days, you're starting to see a few more different games that come out with different worlds, but we still have not seen an Indigenous Australian inspired fantasy world. So it was sort of, if it's something that we thought the world needs to see, the only way to do it was to make it ourselves.
Sounds like a good way to approach it, I think. So you said that there's lots of different stories to draw from, a lot of culture there. What were some of your favourites that you've included?
I really enjoyed how we've been granted permission to use Karawang language. And I think that's been a really cool thing. Just, I feel like when you experience someone else's language and how that creates its own thought patterns, it's very interesting. I don't know. There's like so many stories. It's really hard to pick.
Yeah, there's it's something about the culture and the fact that there are so many tribes, is that it would not be appropriate for us to take stories wholesale. We are not necessarily, we can't always say that one group are the owners of that story or have permission to share it with a wider community. And a lot of stories are also sacred and don't get shared. And what we do together with the Indigenous people that we've employed is work together to find similar kinds of stories that may have the same message, but do not involve the same characters, the exact same trajectory of the story. So that allows us to take inspiration from Indigenous stories while not taking them wholesale. When we first started making the game, we thought, and we sort of like planned out, and we're like, all right, here's the story of Tidalick the frog, who drinks all of the water in the land, and you have to they had to make it throw up the water again, or there would have been extreme drought. And it's like, cool. I mean, I can see how this fits into like a magical world where either our rivers or our potion supplies or something like that. You could just sort of take that and be like, here is Tidalick the frog in Enchanted, but that's not exactly like that. That wouldn't be appropriate for us to do. So working with those communities has been really great to help shape sort of our own spin on it. So like we have shadow spirit monsters and our emu spirit customer leader, where there are things that have been inspired by and brought to life by our staff members, but not taken like from a pot.
If you want like a bite-sized example, our emu spirit was inspired by our Indigenous concept artist Trish, who told us this adorable story about when she would go camping with her family, and the emus would come and steal the meat off their barbecue. So they were these like really cute, pesky creatures, and I think we tried to channel that when she created that concept.
We don't see a lot of games that are made in Australia could be made anywhere almost, the way that they're sort of set out, and by design that's what they're supposed to be. But we're now starting to see a trend of more games which include a sort of Australian cultural content as well, and even just, I guess, general Australian cultural content as well. Do you think this is a direction you're starting to see more developers sort of start to explore? You know, we've seen things like Paperbark, for example, which is very Australian, and now this game, which has got even, you know, you just see koalas in the trees and things like that as you're playing the demo. Is that a trend you'd like to see continue, or something you see that is already developing?
Definitely. As it stands, there were very few games where I could look at and go, like, this is Australia, this is my land, but it started off a little bit more subtle, or like you play Golf Story, and then like you get to the end and it's like, oh, the map was Australia the whole time. You just weren't you didn't realize till you see it there. And then you have other games like Paperbark that are, I mean, this is Australia. There's no doubt about it, and I'm really excited to see more of Australia being represented in games, shown to the world, because we do have a beautiful land, unique wildlife, and it's beautiful to share that with people.
I'm also really excited to see more Indigenous story makers create their games as well. Like, for example, Songlines is another example of a very Australian game that I think is really, really exciting.
So what is your studio structure like normally? Are you always a studio that works remotely? Are you inside of the arcade? How's the game been developed up until the beginning of this year, effectively?
So for the first year, we operated remotely on Discord. And then we got a residency from Acme X. So we moved in around March and immediately had to move out because of the pandemic, unfortunately. But that was ideally where we wanted to be. It's a beautiful space where everyone could see each other and collaborate and share ideas. So that is kind of where we are physically. Was your question about the structure as well?
Yeah. Yep.
So our structure is really flat. We're just basically a group of people that work together. There's not really any hierarchy. Everyone can give feedback, and we have like a bunch of different channels on Discord of art and 3D and animation, and people put their things there, and people are always welcome to give feedback to each other. And I think that even more lately has been really great. Really cross collaborating with across the team is what gives, I think, the most exciting results.
Yeah, we were really excited to move into our office. We just got to the point where we just expanded a whole bunch. We've hired, I think, maybe about 4, maybe 5 people at that point. And we were all so geared up. We had this amazing setup for all of us together. And then, we were there for just less than 2 weeks before we had to move back home again. So we're a bit shattered, but that's life.
Well, it'll be there when you get back, I imagine.
Yeah, so Acme have been very nice, and we're still keeping contact with them, and they're still promoting us and sponsoring us, and yeah.
Making anything, even just kind of living at this moment in time, is pretty tiring. It's tricky to do. How do you balance that all in, especially one of the cities in Australia, which is really locked down in a way that most other cities aren't?
It's been hard, I'm not going to lie. It's been really hard and exhausting. It's been really nice. Every morning we do like a coffee stand-up where we put our videos on and we chat to each other and we be silly for 10 minutes just every day, just to relax and check in on each other's mental health and things like that. And then we also just like encourage staff to like take heaps of breaks, take time off whenever they want. I think it's a really unusual time and I don't have the same expectations of productivity. And so I think I'd rather just look after everyone as people. And if everyone's happy and relaxed and creative, that's when we'll make our best work.
Yeah, we also we reduced our own hours as well. We went to working 4 days a week. Just like it's not sustainable in the current state of the world to keep your workspace in your house, spend 5 days a week in there, and find somewhere to relax. Still, especially while running a company, and when all the work that comes with that chases you downstairs, and you tend to not have as much divide between your spaces anymore. Just making those clear boundaries, and part of that is, I believe, working less so that you can enjoy the moments you're not working more.
Does that mean you are sort of taking more time to make the game now? Has it sort of pushed a few things back, or is it just changing the scope of what you were trying to achieve in the first place?
Yeah, there's no doubt that we are going to take a bit longer than we thought to make the game. Like, we've had to take time out of our schedule to ensure that everyone, our employees and ourselves as well, are well looked after, keep their mental health, and I think that's just part of the reality of it. It would be irresponsible to try to keep to a deadline. Like, if it's a date in a calendar, it can be moved. It's not worth the cost of anyone's body or mental health. So yeah, we'll take a little bit longer to get there, but I think overall it's a good thing, and it's just the circumstances which are unfortunate, not our approach to it.